Let's open this with a truth most men overlook. What moves a woman emotionally is rarely what men are told to focus on. We've been fed this idea that being strong, successful, or even relentlessly nice is enough. But none of that sticks if you don't understand what quietly captivates her, the things she doesn't even admit to herself. Because beneath the surface of every emotionally complex woman is a set of deep emotional triggers, not manipulative ones, not dishonest ones, but real, instinctual signals that most men miss entirely. And when you miss them, you try harder at the wrong things, over-explaining, over-giving, and in the process, becoming emotionally predictable. But when you stop seeking permission and start living from your center, something strange happens. She notices, not because you're doing more, but because you're finally doing less, and it disrupts her rhythm in a way she didn't expect. So today, we're going to break open those psychological triggers, the quiet switches that turn interest into obsession, not through effort, but presence. Let's begin. 1. When you don't flinch, she feels it in her core. Imagine this. She's in the middle of a storm. Her voice is raised. Her mood is tense. Maybe she pulls away. Maybe she tests your tone. And every man before you? He rose to the chaos. He defended himself. He chased softness. He argued for understanding. But you didn't move. You didn't match her heat with heat. You didn't crumble. You stood still, emotionally still, not frozen. Still, rooted. That stillness is not passive. It's deeply masculine. Because in a world where men mirror her emotions, the one who refuses to do so becomes unforgettable. She may not say it, but something in her shifts. Her energy, once sharp and controlling, begins to soften. Not because she lost, but because she finally felt safe enough to put down the armor. Epictetus said it simply, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The battlefield isn't out there, it's inside. And when she sees that her storms do not rattle you, that you don't collapse just because she raises her voice or withdraws into silence, a hidden trust starts to form. Not because you conquered her, but because you didn't lose yourself in her. 2. Her need for certainty makes your silence unbearable. Here's what most men never realize. When you pull back from her, not in anger, not as manipulation, but as a return to your center, her world gets louder. Suddenly, she doesn't know where she stands. She doesn't know if she still holds your attention. She replays your last words. She checks for signs, for reactions, for closure that doesn't come. Why? Because you've become a question instead of an answer. And women think in questions. Did I go too far? Is he done? Why hasn't he said anything? In that space of silence, her imagination fills the void. And ironically, it's in your absence, not your presence, that she starts reflecting on your worth. The Stoics didn't teach withdrawal for the sake of power. They taught sovereignty. As Marcus Aurelius put it, you have power over your mind, not outside events. When your peace becomes your priority, not her approval, she feels the shift. It's subtle, it's uncomfortable, but it's powerful, because when she can no longer predict you, she can no longer dismiss you. 3. Why she softens when she can't shake you. Let's flip the script. You don't yell, you don't beg, you don't plead for her to understand. You simply hold your line. You lower your voice instead of raising it. You speak only when necessary, and when you do, your words come slowly, clearly, and calmly. And then something unexpected happens. She stops fighting, not because she lost the argument, but because she realizes there's no argument to win. You weren't there to win. You were just there, present, whole, undisturbed. And for the first time, she sees herself. Because that's what masculine calm does. It mirrors. It holds space. It allows her to feel the parts of herself she normally avoids by staying in control. The Stoics understood this. Seneca wrote, "The greatest power is often simple presence." You don't need to overpower her emotions. You just need to stop reacting to them. And the moment she feels that stillness in you, something ancient in her lets go. That's when her defenses drop. 4. Certainty is the one thing she can't resist. You know what most women say they want? Vulnerability, openness, a man who listens and shares. And yes, all of that matters. But underneath that list is a need she'll rarely admit. Certainty. Not controlled, not dominance, not barking orders, but inner certainty. A man who knows who he is, what he stands for, and doesn't bend just to be liked. That kind of energy makes her trust. Even when she doesn't understand it, she feels it. She stops trying to lead. She stops trying to test. And in that moment she surrenders, not in weakness, but in alignment. This isn't about traditional gender roles. This is about polarity. The deeper interplay between masculine clarity and feminine emotion. She can't surrender to a man who's swayed by her moods. But when she feels your boundary, not as a rule, but as a presence, she relaxes. She stops trying to control the dynamic. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This is the code. You don't need to convince her of your values. You just need to embody them. And when does she feel that? That's when submission happens. Naturally, emotionally, without force. 5. She falls for how she feels around you, not what she sees in you. Men often assume they have to show value through looks, money, and charm. But women aren't drawn to those things unless they're wrapped in something deeper. It's not who you are on paper. It's how she feels about herself in your presence. If your energy is rooted, if your gaze is steady, if your emotional tone is calm, she feels beautiful around you. Not because you flatter her, but because your groundedness reflects something to her. Her anima is seen, not judged. That's the key. Most men try to convince her to feel something. But when you stop chasing emotional response and simply be, you create space. And in that space, she opens. Not because you forced her to, but because she felt free to. There's a wordless truth in this. When your presence makes her feel more herself, she doesn't want to leave it. She doesn't even understand why. But she keeps coming back. If you've ever wondered why she pulls away when you finally give her your all, the answer isn't in your effort. It's in your emotional positioning. See, most men operate under the belief that love is earned through sacrifice, devotion, and making her the center of their universe. But the truth? That energy is heavy. When you make her your emotional foundation, she doesn't feel flattered. She feels pressure, and pressure kills attraction. But when she feels that you don't need her, not coldly or carelessly, but in a centered, fulfilled, grounded energy, suddenly, her world shifts. Let's start with one of the deepest paradoxes most men never see until it's too late. 6. The less you need her, the more she leans in. She doesn't want to be your peace. She wants to feel your peace. When a woman senses that you're emotionally dependent on her, she pulls back. Not because she's cruel, but because she feels the weight of your imbalance. She's not your therapist. She's not your emotional anchor. And if she starts feeling like she is, she starts emotionally checking out. But when does she feel your self-sufficiency? When she sees that you're already full before she arrives? That's when she starts giving freely, without guilt, without hesitation, without manipulation. Because now, your time feels like a gift, not a cry for validation. Your presence becomes sacred, not assumed. And suddenly, she wants back in, not because you chased, but because you stopped orbiting around her. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself." When you live from that mindset, when your happiness is rooted in your being, not her behavior, you shift the dynamic. She's no longer the emotional prize. You are. And women, consciously or not, feel that difference. 7. Timing isn't a game. It's a signal of self-worth. Let's talk about something subtle but powerful. Availability. Most men think showing up means always being there. Text back fast. Be ready when she calls. Say yes to every invite. But what if I told you that always being available makes your presence less valuable? You stop being a person she connects with and start becoming emotional background noise. It's not about playing games. It's about having a rhythm of your own, a life that doesn't pause every time she breathes. Because when she realizes she doesn't have automatic access to you, she begins to cherish the access she does get. Think about it. If your energy is always ready, always pouring into her regardless of context, she doesn't feel it anymore. But when you're selective, When you pause before replying, when you say no without guilt, when you don't fill silence just to avoid discomfort, your presence becomes meaningful again. Seneca nailed it with this: "He who is everywhere is nowhere." It's not about being distant, it's about being intentional. Because a man who values his time teaches others to value it too. And when she sees that, she doesn't get offended. She leans in. 8. Self-respect doesn't just attract her, it awakens her. This one cuts deep. Every man wants to be respected. But most don't realize that respect doesn't come from what you do. It comes from what you refuse to tolerate. See, most guys are taught to be agreeable. Be the nice guy. Be understanding. Don't rock the boat. And for a while that might seem to work. But over time something shifts. She stops respecting the man who always says yes. She starts pushing boundaries, not because she's malicious, but because she needs to feel yours. Respect isn't about being hard. It's about being clear. When a woman sees that you'll walk away, rather than tolerate disrespect, when she watches you hold your line even if it costs her attention, when your standards speak louder than your compliments, she stops testing. She starts wondering, who is this man who doesn't flinch when I pull away? Marcus Aurelius said it best: "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You don't need to explain why you have standards. You just need to live by them. And when she sees that you'd rather lose her than lose yourself, she feels something she can't explain but can't ignore. 9. When she realizes you can walk, she stops playing. Every woman at some level assumes that most men will stick around if she gives them just enough. A little affection here, a compliment there, a breadcrumb trail that keeps them emotionally available, just in case she decides to commit later. But when she meets a man who no longer needs to be chosen, who could walk, and actually would, everything changes. You don't announce it. You don't throw ultimatums. You just stop explaining, stop proving, stop orbiting her indecision. And now, for the first time, she has to face the possibility that you're not bluffing, that you really could leave, that your silence isn't a tactic, it's peace. And that's when she starts feeling something most men never inspire: urgency. She starts reevaluating, reconsidering, not because you convinced her, but because your actions reminded her. You were never waiting. You were always ready to leave what didn't serve you. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." And that's what walking away really is. Freedom, not from her, but from the need to be chosen. And when you reach that place, she can't help but watch you differently. 10. She doesn't submit to words. She submits to energy. She might say she wants communication, depth, openness. And yes, she means it. But there's something she wants even more, and she'll never say it directly. Certainty. Unshakable, grounded, masculine certainty. The kind of presence that doesn't ask for approval, that doesn't shift to match her moods, that doesn't beg to be understood. When she feels that kind of clarity, something in her breaks open. Not because you forced her to submit, but because she felt safe enough to stop performing. This is what the Stoics lived by: not control, but congruence. If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Masculine certainty is not arrogance. It's inner discipline, a compass that doesn't change direction based on how loud the world gets. And when you live by that compass, when your no is firm, your eye contact steady, and your emotions rooted, she stops leading. She starts leaning. Not because she's weak, but because she's finally safe. You've probably heard it 1,000 times. Be yourself, and the right woman will choose you. But what no one tells you is this: if you spend your whole life trying to be chosen, you never become the standard. You become an emotional performer. You second-guess your words. You wait for her to validate you, for her to see your worth, for her to say you're the one. And even if she does, deep down, you'll always question whether you earned it or just got lucky. The truth is, most men never make the shift. They stay in the mindset of the applicant, never realizing they were born to be the standard. Not the option she settles for, but the presence she measures others against. Let's walk through the final piece of this evolution, because once you embody this, everything changes, not just with women, but in life. First, stop trying to be chosen. Start being the standard. Most men act as if they are being tested. They wait for her affection, her approval, her availability, as if those things aren't enough unless she confirms them. But when you carry yourself like a man who knows he's already worthy, the entire game flips. You're not chasing her yes. You are the yes. You're not trying to squeeze into her story. You're building your own. And if she aligns, beautiful. If she doesn't, you keep walking with grace, not desperation. This isn't arrogance. This is rootedness. The confidence that doesn't need to be loud because it's already certain. You're not interested in being picked anymore. You're interested in alignment. That's the real glow-up. Because now, she has to rise to meet you. Now she's the one asking, am I what he's looking for? Not because you played hard to get, but because you stopped performing to be seen. And when you live like that, you're not an option anymore. You're the metric, the standard. As Epictetus said, know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. You're not bending to fit her preference. You're dressing the part of the man you've already become, because that's who you answer to now. Second, emotional discipline is the final framework. Here's where most men fail. They do the inner work, they reclaim their time, they build presence, but the moment emotions rise, they fall back into old habits. They react, they explain, they try to rescue the connection instead of honoring their boundaries. But emotional strength is not just about silence. It's about consistency under pressure, the ability to stay still even when it burns, the discipline to walk away not in anger, but in alignment. Women don't need perfection. They need congruence. Your calm, your no, your timing. It has to hold even when she tests it, because she will test it. Not always consciously, but emotionally, to see if the frame you set is real or temporary. If you collapse when she gets distant, if you chase the moment she withdraws, if you explain when silence would speak louder, then she knows it was all an act. You weren't the standard. You were just rehearsing it. But when you maintain that frame, when you keep leading with calm presence and don't let emotion hijack your actions, that's when she starts trusting you on a level that's instinctive, not intellectual. That's what Stoicism is really about. Not just philosophy, not cold detachment, but self-command. Knowing how to respond, not react. Knowing when to stand firm, not to impress, but because it's who you are. Third, presence that makes her feel herself, not just see you. Here's a truth most men never hear. She doesn't fall in love with who you are on paper. She falls in love with who she becomes when she's around you. Not because you flatter her, not because you fix her, but because your presence is so emotionally steady that she starts letting her real self rise to the surface. She softens. She slows down. She breathes differently. Why? Because you're no longer feeding her a version of yourself meant to gain her approval. You're just being. And in that stillness, she begins to feel her anima, the feminine energy inside her that doesn't want to lead, doesn't want to calculate. It wants to feel, to open, to merge. You're not talking your way into her heart. You're mirroring her, showing her, through your stillness, what it feels like to be safe without words. This is where you become unforgettable, because most men talk too much, prove too hard, or perform too eagerly. You don't. You watch, you witness, you hold. Seneca wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his power." That's what you've become, a man so centered, his presence alone awakens emotion, not because he tries, but because he is. Fourth, stop explaining your worth. Live it. If you've made it this far, it means you've started letting go of the constant urge to justify yourself. And here's the truth. The more you explain your worth, the less she feels it. You don't need to tell her how loyal you are, how hard you work, how much do you care. You don't need to remind her of all the things you've done, because real value doesn't scream. It just is. You show up. You stay consistent. You honor your time. You speak when needed. You leave when disrespected. You don't need a reason. You don't need a witness. You don't need applause. And the more you do this, the more she feels something without knowing why. That's the essence of masculine energy. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't beg to be seen. It just walks through the room, and the entire dynamic adjusts around it. Finally, make the quiet choice that rewrites the story. So here's where we land. This isn't about playing hard to get. This isn't about punishing her. This isn't about tricks or tactics. It's about becoming so rooted in your peace, your values, and your purpose that you don't need her reaction to feel like a man. When you reach that point, everything shifts. You don't chase. You don't perform. You don't pull away to get attention. You walk away to protect your center. And here's the kicker. She knows the difference. She knows when you're being strategic and when you've truly let go. That's why the men who are done chasing, who've stopped auditioning, who've stopped begging, who've stopped trying to be chosen, are the ones she feels drawn back to. Not because they tricked her, but because they became the emotional anchor she never knew she needed. Let's bring it home with Marcus Aurelius again. Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig. You've stopped waiting. You've started becoming. You're no longer a reaction to her emotions. You are a presence she either meets or misses. Either way, you stay you. So if you're tired of proving, chasing, or twisting your soul to win over someone who hasn't even found your truth yet, write in the comments, "I am the standard," not because you shouted it, but now you live it.